So today we're going to attempt to make an inlaid cutting board. So we're going to take a cutting board and we're going to inlay a family crest on that cutting board. At least we're going to attempt to do it. Now I've seen this done in many different ways. Laser Dave over at Trotec was the one that originated the method that I'm going to use today. And I've done this myself, but I've never done it with a bunch of different pieces. So today we're going to do it a little different. We're going to use some aluminum tape that they use for AC systems to tape the joint shut, some wide aluminum tape. And I'm going to use this cutting board right here. This is mahogany. It's something that I just cut out. I've had some mahogany board. You can see the scrap piece back there up against the wall. I got these boards of wood, so these pieces of mahogany from a company called North Shore Woods. They're in Mandeville, Louisiana. If you're ever in the Louisiana area, or if you're in the Louisiana area, or maybe Mississippi or Alabama, it's definitely worth the trip over to North Shore Woods. It is an absolute huge place, and they carry every type of wood you could ever possibly imagine. It would literally take you all day to walk the entire warehouse. And I mean, 20 feet high, aisles that just go as far as you can see. And right by the entrance door, they have the scrap section. And there are some, like this wood that I bought here, it's supposed to be 8 inches wide and 12 feet long. Well, it turns out that these boards that I bought were 7.5 inches all the way up to 9 inches. And some of them were 8 inches wide, but 7.5 at one point. So they sell them as scrap, and it's 3/4 of an inch thick. And I got it for $18 a piece. So I have a whole bunch of those sitting next door. And today, all I did was cut out this pattern. I actually haven't finished it yet. You can see the little pencil drawing there for the hole I have to drill. But I took and just traced this out. And this is what I come up with. And I used on this one, I used my jigsaw. So kind of rough, not really finished yet. Backside isn't finished at all. I only sanded and alcohol prepped the front side to get it ready for laser engraving. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to inlay it with this curly maple. So this curly maple is 1 millimeter thick. This is 3/4 of an inch thick. And I have to figure out how to do this. And I've got all the supplies that I need. I didn't have to actually go buy anything. But one thing I wanted to mention about getting this wood. So if you get this wood, now this is mahogany. So to get a piece of mahogany like this, a cutting board this size, they're going to charge you $25 or $30 because it's mahogany. So I paid $18 a piece for these 8 inch by 12 foot boards. So do the math on that. And out of a 12-foot board, I can get 13 of these just by arranging them so that the handles fit, in the sides. So I can get 13 of these out of one 12-foot board for $18. So I know that you're probably not close to Louisiana, but wherever you are, search for, exotic wood sales or whatever on Google, and go to Google Maps and see if you can find someone that sells exotic woods. And you'll be surprised at how much money you can actually save on something like this. Let's jump into LightBurn real quick and show you what I got going on here. So this is my friend Peter's crest, the best that we can figure out. We did a whole bunch of searching for, family crests online, and this looks like it's it. And his family dates back to, I don't know, 600 or 700 years in England, and it's the Lancaster family. So I'm just going to shrink this a little bit, and you'll notice what I did here I made sure everything was filled. Lines here were all in line. So I did a lot of offsetting in here and widened up some of the lines on everything here. And then over here, I took a photograph of the wood that I just cut out. And I know that the width right over here, I've got at 126 millimeters. So if you look up here, it's 126 millimeters is the width. And I also know that the height is 280. So if you look here, pretty close to 280. That picture was a pretty good representation of the wood that I cut out. So now I'm going to take this and bring it over here and size it to the size of the cutting board. I'm just going to hold control, scale it from the middle, and I think that is probably pretty good right there. So I'm just going to select both of these now, and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to align these vertically on center. So just like that. And I think that looks pretty good. So the first thing I have to do is I have to laser this and get about 3/4 of a millimeter in depth. So what I'm going to do is take a scrap piece of the mahogany and I'm just going to create a square like that, a rectangle. And I'm going to run some different speeds and powers on here and on that piece of scrap material. And I think maybe I'll go as far as a full millimeter deep because I can always sand down the front. So I'm going to go do that real quick and get my settings, and then I'll be right back. All right, so I got my scrap piece of mahogany and I started to draw some of these rectangles out, and I couldn't quite get it dialed in here. And finally I figured out when I got to the second one from the top, I figured out that I had it set for 300 millimeters per second and 90% power. And this is the RM J750 CO2. And I couldn't quite get to that 1 millimeter. I was getting close, 0.85. So what I did was I raised the LPI. So spot size on this is about 0.08, and that would bring in the LPI to about 318. So what I did was I raised the LPI to 360 so that the lines would overlap just a little bit. And that's how I got exactly to 1 millimeter right there on the top one. So now I've got my settings down for this. I'm going to go ahead and throw the cutting board on there and run the job and show you the results. Okay, I'm back and I've got my cutting board engraved, and I'm just going to take a toothbrush and go through and clean out all of the engraving. And I'm not going to do all of this right now, but this is the idea, just a toothbrush and just clean out all of that engraving to get prepared for the inlay. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I've gone ahead and in the other laser lab and I've cut out a piece of the veneer, the curly maple veneer, and I've affixed some aluminum tape, the type of tape that they used for duct work. And I went ahead and rolled that on, made sure it was on nice and tight. And the purpose of this is once you have that tape on there, when you engrave the other side, it's not going to go through the aluminum foil. So the laser will not penetrate that aluminum backer on here. So what we're going to do is inverse the image. Let's jump up into LightBurn. Here is our original image. And what we're going to do is we're going to invert this image. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to draw a square around the image itself. So let's grab the rectangle tool and let's start over here by an edge and drag over this way like that. And we can bring these edges in like so, just to where it covers the entire image. And that should be good right there. So now what's going to happen is the laser is going to engrave all of the black. But one thing that we didn't do, which I just realized, is we didn't invert this image. So for right now, let's pull this off, grab this, and we have to mirror this image. So we're going to mirror this horizontally. I'm just going to click the mirror button up here on the top. And now you see that the name is backwards, because when we flip the inlay over the top of it, it's got to be backwards. So now we can take and grab this square over here, select this one and bullseye them, and we should be ready to go. And that's it right there. So now the laser is going to laser away all the black area and leave the white area on the inlay. And that should be exactly what we're looking for. So I'm going to give this one a run. So I'm going to bring this over to the CO2, run this job, and then we'll be right back. All right, moving on to the inlay. Now this took about 5 minutes. So what I've done here is I've speeded this up so that it'll only take a minute. So this is 10 times speed, and basically one pass, 10 times speed. Now on the actual engraving of the Mahogany, I don't know, something happened with that video. It didn't quite come out. So I lost that one, but hopefully you'll forgive me for that. And we're just about done here. It's almost to the top. This is one pass, and came out real good. Okay, so I've got this done. Here it is. And it looks a little black, but I can feel it's sticky. So that's all the way through the curly maple. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim this off with a blade. And I'm going to go flip this into the cutting board and glue it in place. So we're going to run next door right now. Going to trim this up, glue it up, and see what we wind up with. So now came the moment of truth. I was a little bit worried about this part because I've never done this before. So I wasn't really sure how this was going to turn out. So I started by taking some Titebond glue and just smearing it around. I like to smear it all around with my finger first and kind of push it into the cracks and crevices before I get a business card out and start spreading it with the business card. And I think this is probably the best way to do this is with the business card, because it keeps you from picking up any glue that's already in the engraving. So this is just, basic stuff right here. I just wanted to throw this in the video because some people want to put that glue on with a paintbrush. Don't do that. Just grab a business card and spread it out. So here we go. Now this took me probably, I would say 15 or maybe even 20 minutes. I've cut down the video quite a bit here, so you don't have to watch the whole process. But if you move it around, you kind of sort of feel like it drops in some places, and you can peel it back up and check and make sure everything is fitting into the right spot. So I tried to get a few spots on top and on bottom, and then I would peel it back. If you see right there, that cross was dead on perfect. So, and that you could actually feel that pop in that engraving right there. So then I got my roller. I felt pretty confident at this point. So I got out my roller and I started pressing it. And I got to tell you that this was the nerve-wracking part. I just had to keep peeling it back and checking to make sure that the inlay was falling into the engraving properly. And like I said, it's my first time doing this. So it took me quite a while to feel comfortable or confident that I was getting it into those grooves. And after a little while, if you feel around, you can sort of feel that it's in the grooves. Although I just kept checking and checking and checking and going over it back and forth. And I know this is probably more information than you guys want to see. But I just want, being that it's my first time, I wanted to make sure everything was as good as I could possibly get it. So just kept going over it with the roller. And finally, I got that done. And I think that's ready to go now. And now I am ready for the peel. So I took my big heavy button maker off of it, which I left on there for about 4 hours. So I think that 4 hours for the Titebond is enough, and I can start the peel or the reveal. And I was really cautious with this because it had only been 4 hours. Probably should leave it overnight, but it seemed to be peeling just fine. And as I got a little more confident as I went, because everything seemed to be perfect. And finally, I'm just going to go ahead and rip the rest of it off and get to the sanding on this. So that all worked out perfectly. There's nothing left on the aluminum tape, and that made me feel a little better. So I got out my sander and just started with the orbital sander. I didn't want to bring this into the other shop because it was raised up quite high in a few places, which sort of had me worried. So I started with a 180 grit that I had already used to sand the board to prep it to begin with. So it was a used 180 grit, so maybe like a 220 by that point. And I worked on it for a little while. I wanted to take down all of those high spots with it. So then once I got all the high spots down, I went ahead and switched over to an 80 grit. Because I felt more comfortable now taking off a little more material, getting the rest of that glue off of there. So now this whole process took probably 15 minutes because I wanted to go at it really slow. And finally I got it down to about where I want it to be and where I can clean it off and put the other sandpaper on and go back to that 180 used paper. And I think this came out really, really nice so far. So here I'm just cleaning it off with a little 70% alcohol cleaner. And there is the final result. And I'm ready to get to the 180 or I guess maybe 200, 220 sandpaper and get this job finished. All right, it's, let's see, 6 hours later since the start of this project. You can see I've got my 5 o'clock shadow going on, and I finally have an almost finished product. So I'm about to finish this just a little bit more. I think I like the sharp edges, so I'm going to leave the sharp edges. This is what I wound up with, and I think it came out really great. So there are a couple of little blemishes down here in the corner. So this is a lesson learned. So if you look down in this corner over here, you're going to see a couple of little blemishes. And what those are is where I've gone past lower than the inlay. So those are the only blemishes on here. And I learned a lesson with this because not everything pressed all the way down into the groove. Not quite sure why, because you know, I had my test piece and I checked it. You know, it was right at 0.9 millimeters, So this all should have sunk into the groove properly. All of these little parts way up here on the top came out absolutely perfect. And I don't know why, but this whole part down here just stood proud just a little bit too much. And there is a slight warp in the wood. You probably can't see it on camera, but I did need to take a lot of material off the top. So like I said in the video, I started with the 180 grit, and it was used because I had already sanded part of this. You can see the back part is different. And I started with the 180, and I took it down all the way down until I felt that everything was perfectly flat on here. Then I switched over to my new pad, the 80 grit, and brought it down even further. So I brought it down just a little bit too far right there. Now keep in mind, this is the first time I'm using this process. So I think for the first time it came out pretty good. But the lesson learned for the next project is make sure to sand it completely flat before I start, and then maybe go the full 1 millimeter depth. So I think I was right at about 0.85, 0.86, and I thought that would be good. But there was just a couple pieces, this piece right here and this piece over here, that stood proud. This one survived, but these little corners here are not absolutely perfect. So I'm going to redo this. I have plenty of wood to redo this again. So this will be the piece that I'll keep. And then on the next one, now that I'm feeling confident, I'm going to redo this cutting board, cut out a new one. In fact, I'm going to cut up the rest of that board over there, the mahogany, into these little cutting boards. And I'm going to do a new one for him. I'm going to do one for my wife. And I think I've got it down now. So I hope you you enjoyed this video. My first time doing an inlay using the Trotec method. I forgot his name now. Laser Dave. Laser Dave's method that he developed using the aluminum foil tape. I think it's a great way to do inlays. I've done inlays before, but usually just like one piece, that I just cut out, and then I engrave it off the wood and then glue it in place. This is totally different with this aluminum foil, and I absolutely love it. So now that I'm done with my 6 or maybe even 6.5 hour project, I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it for you. And down below in the description, you're going to find links to everything that I used here in this video today. So clicking on those referral links doesn't cost you a penny more, and it helps to support the channel. So as always, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.